The Detroit Pistons just lost their fourth and final game of the preseason to the Memphis Grizzlies. In today's episode, I want to talk about everything that we saw from preseason that needs to change when the regular season comes around. We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. I also got to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season, more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, the Detroit Pistons lost their fourth and final preseason game tonight when I'm recording this on the 13th to the Memphis Grizzlies. There's quite a few things that I want to talk about. I don't know if we're going to get to all of it in this episode. But one thing I do want to make sure, I want to start off on the positive note a little bit. I want to give Isaiah Stewart a ton of credit. He shot the ball pretty well from deep tonight. The first few shots that he took from deep were some pretty ugly misses, but he was confident enough to keep shooting and keep going away. And that kind of thing is how you improve, and that's how you get better. By even when you're missing, you continue to go through the same process over and over and over, and eventually you get more consistent with the good results. So we're going to talk about him a little bit more later, but I did want to start off with a more positive note and just give him a shout out real quickly before we get into some things that need to change for the Pistons heading into the regular season. And there's quite a few things that need to change. I mean, we spent like the last 3 episodes talking about the defense, how the defense is the switch everything defense just isn't very good, and how I'm not a big fan of it at all. We've talked about that a lot. Here I want to talk about, though, is Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. And we're going to focus on Cade Cunningham. I've speculated that this was just happening because of preseason, and very well could be that. They could just be testing some things and trying some different stuff out in preseason. That could very well be it. So we'll see when regular season comes around. I'm going to hope that it was only like this because it was preseason, because I really don't think this should continue to happen, and this is what I'm talking about. If you guys remember, for those of you guys who have listened to the podcast for quite a while, going back to last year when Cade first started, and when his rookie season first started, you guys will remember that I said Cade was taking way too many threes. He was settling for jumpers way too often, and that was contributing to his efficiency. But after the All-Star break and as the season started to go on, the three-point attempts started to go down. The rim frequency started to go up. More mid-ranges, more shots at the rim, and he started to become much more efficient. That's where he really just took off and showed the world that he could be the face of the franchise for the Pistons, and he's going to be a superstar one day. That's when he took off, and that's going to be his key to success, not only just this year or last year for him. It's going to be his key to success for his time in the NBA. That's how he's going to make his bread and butter. And in the preseason, we didn't see that a lot at all. And he went back to shooting a lot of threes. Way too many of his overall shot attempts were from beyond the arc. Through 3 preseason games, 5 of his 11 attempts per game were threes. And then in tonight's game against the Memphis Grizzlies, 8 of his 16 shots were from 3. So half of his shots being from 3, just not a good recipe for success at all. That's not what Cade's going to be great at. That's not what Cade's about. Cade needs to get to the rim, draw fouls, get into this sweet spot in the mid-range, use his length, use his size to finish around the rim like we saw last year. However, part of the problem, or maybe not the problem, I guess, but part of the reason you're seeing him take so many threes in preseason is because he's playing with Jaden Ivey. And in the preseason, they have Cade playing off-ball a lot. And I mean a lot. Now, playing with Jaden Ivey and having that backcourt by choosing to draft Jaden Ivey, you are saying that they're going to have to split some time on ball and off ball. That's fine. Cade's going to have to play off ball some. He's just going to have to. And this is by no means excusing him shooting poorly from beyond the arc in the preseason. He has to hit shots from beyond the arc. I think he's eventually going to, but he just has to do that. However, you do want to play to your superstar and your face of the franchise strengths. And playing him this amount off ball that they did in the preseason is way too much. in my opinion. Way too much off-ball for him. Again, he does have to play off-ball some. That's going to come with getting Jaden Ivey, but they were doing it way too much for him in preseason, and they were having him defer to Jaden Ivey way, way too much in the preseason. Now, I've also said that this could have been Cade's own doing. He could be just letting his teammates get into the flow of things, letting Jaden Ivey fill this out in the preseason before the regular season comes around. He kind of takes the bull by the horn and does his own thing. That could also be the case. It could be Cade, it could be the coaching staff, whatever. All I know is that he better not be off-ball this much in the regular season. Cade is the Pistons' best player. You got a new shiny toy, and I know that it's not just fans that do this. You guys remember that last year I said we had a little podcast when I talked about how fans always love the new shiny toy and just throw out the old used one a year later. So as soon as they get a new rookie, they love the new shiny toy. I don't want the coaching staff to get into the same idea. They got a new shiny toy with Jaden Ivey, explosive, something that the Pistons just didn't have on the roster. I know you want to use him, but let's not forget who the best player on this team is. Let's not forget who the face of the franchise is, and let's not forget what he's great at and what he's great at doing. Again, it is preseason. I'm not trying to overreact too much and say this is how they're going to do it the regular season, fire Dwayne Casey, blah, blah. I'm just simply saying what we saw in preseason with that cannot happen in regular season. I hope that is something they change. Cade taking 5 of his 11 attempts from deep, or 5 of his overall 11 attempts from deep, cannot happen. It just can't. That's not his recipe of success. He needs to be creating for Jaden Ivey. He needs to be the one creating for everybody else. That's how it should be working. And I hope that's how it goes when the regular season comes around. Because I don't think that Cade is ready to become just a full-time, or not full-time. Let me not troll. He wasn't a full-time off-ball, but as much off-ball as he was in preseason, I don't think he's ready for that. I hope eventually the outside shot comes around to where he's shooting close to 40%. If he does, that's going to be great. But I don't think that's right now, at least in my opinion. And he needs to have the ball in his hands more than Jaden Ivey. He's better than Jaden Ivey. He is the best player on this team. He is the Pistons' future. And if the Pistons have any shot of doing anything that you guys believe that they can do, a lot of you guys believe they had a chance of pushing for the play-in. And then I believe that Cade can be a future MVP and that the Pistons are going to be contending with him on the team at some point. If they have any shot of doing any of those things, Cade has to be the focal point of that. Playing him off ball like this can't happen. That's way too much. Way, way too much. And Jaden Ivey, I would say probably is better right now off ball than Cade because he can use his explosiveness to take advantage of the advantages Cade makes for him of reacting defense to defense that's recovering. Ivey can explode through and take advantage of that more than Cade can, at least until Cade can hit the outside shot at a really high clip. So I just hope this whole kind of thing flips itself when the regular season comes around next week on Wednesday. So that's my biggest takeaway that needs to change from preseason to regular season. That has to change. If it doesn't, the Pistons are going to be struggling offensively, I believe. And Cade's going to continue to struggle from outside and overall efficiency if they don't go back to how things should be. So let me know if you guys agree with that statement. You guys agree with that takeaway. Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kukahill. When we come back, we're going to talk about Isaiah Stewart now. I wanted to start off with a positive. I didn't just want to get right into a negative. But I wanted to start off with a positive, give him a shout out. And now in the next segment, we're going to go full blown and talk about what we saw from him tonight and why it's really impressive. But also, you saw, you know what, actually, I don't want to spoil it. Just stay tuned for what we're going to talk about with Isaiah Stewart. But first, I had to tell you guys a little bit about one of our sponsors. I got to tell you guys about BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football and basketball betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game that you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport that's out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB playoffs, MMA, boxing, golf, tennis, NBA, NFL, college sports. Anything you can think of, it's probably going to be at BetOnline.net. So head to BetOnline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about their trends and action today. And if you head over there and click on the basketball section, you can see the odds for MVP, who's going to win the championship, worst record in the league, sixth man of the year, most improved, who's going to get the top pick in the draft next year, rookie of the year, all that kind of stuff you can already get a look at over at BetOnline.net. So again, head to BetOnline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about their trends and action today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. Or you can head over to whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Leave us a 5-star review. That's another great way to support the podcast. So we had a few issues with our recording equipment or our recording software before we started this podcast, and I had to go somewhere else to get this going. So I forgot to actually say the answer to the last episode's question for the Detroit Sports Trivia. And the random answer, or the random person I'm going to give a shout out to for getting this answer correct, the question was, just to give you guys a reminder, who sank two free throws at the end of Game 6 of the 1988 NBA Finals to beat the Pistons 103-102 and force a Game 7? It was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Aiden Wagner in the YouTube section comments got this answer correct. A lot of you guys sent in the same answer, but Aiden Wagner, he is the random listener we are going to shout out on the podcast today. Good answer. We will ask the next question at the end of the podcast, so if you're staying tuned for that, just wait around to the end of the podcast, and I'll get that one out for you guys. But anyways, I want to get back to talking about not Chauncey. I'm looking at one of the questions being something about Chauncey. I want to talk about Isaiah Stewart. So Isaiah Stewart tonight shot 40% from deep against the Memphis Grizzlies, and that's great. It was absolutely fantastic. The fact that he was able to hit I think at one point he hit 3 in a row. The fact that at one point he had 2-3 consecutive misses that looked absolutely ugly, with the last one being an air ball, for him to then continue shooting from beyond the arc and hit 3 in a row confidently and keep letting it fly, to even get up 10 threes in a game, I think that says wonders about his development, or it says wonders about where he's trying to get to. If he would have missed those 3 shots and then started hesitating and stopped shooting, that would have been the worst situation possible. That would have been the worst thing he could have possibly done. You need to shoot through it. Much like we talk about with Killian Hayes. It's not just about how you're doing in the present time. You may shoot 0 of 5. You may shoot 0 of 7. But the main thing is you have to remain aggressive, remain confident, so you can work through the struggles to where the success is more consistent than the struggles are. You're not going to get there if every single time you have a struggle, you start back off and you give up. You can't do that. You have to keep putting in the same amount of work that you would whether you're missing or you're making. And Isaiah Stewart did that tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies. So that's incredibly impressive. I absolutely love that. I hope, that Stu ends up going into the season and throughout the season hitting a high amount of his threes. That would do great things for the Pistons and for him as a player moving forward. However, the point of the podcast is something, is like I said at the beginning of the episode, that I want to see things change from preseason to a regular season. So I don't want this to come off as like a backhanded compliment to Stu, because it's not. I loved what I saw from Stu individually. However, you saw part of the problem that the Pistons are going to deal with as a team in the half court as he figures this out for him, which this is a development season. I've said this over and over. Some of you guys believe they can push for the play-in. That's fine. Watch the Pistons how you choose to watch them. But I believe that they're in another restoring, I don't want to say rebuilding because rebuilding apparently pisses people off, a restoring year where they're not going to be very good. So it's fine to me if you have some things not going the right way, because it's in the long-term interest of development. However, as you saw tonight against the Grizzlies big man just was not guarding Stu no matter what. And even after he hit a few, they still just weren't guarding him. And if Stu can hit them at a high enough rate to make defenses pay, then it'll be okay. He'll have to hit 40% for real for them to pay enough to where they're like, okay, now we have to go out to him. And that's something we talked about on the podcast consistently all offseason. I told you guys that even if Stu shot 34% from deep, that's not going to be enough for defenses to respect him from outside. And is 34% from 3 on like 6 attempts enough to make up for that? And you saw a glimpse of that against the Grizzlies tonight. Jane Ivey, and more importantly, I feel like Cade really struggled getting to the rim tonight in the few on-ball reps he had, because Steven Adams was just sitting in the paint, because Brandon Clark was just sitting in the paint. Now they kept hitting Stu, and eventually Stu started hitting some. However, the defense still didn't react. The defenses aren't going to react to Stu hitting a few threes, because like we mentioned in the last episode, with some teams' defensive philosophy is to give up threes because they don't believe you're going to hit them at a high enough clip than you would like open layups. You're not going to hit them at a high enough clip to beat them. And I think most defensive strategies will be to, hey, if Stu hits a few threes, go ahead and let him. He's not going to shoot 40% each game. He probably hit 2 of 7, probably hit 2 of 6, and we can live with that instead of giving Cade open layup after open layup, contested or not contested, but free throw attempts from getting to the rim. Like instead of that, we'll live with Isaiah Stewart taking threes, and that's what you saw from the Grizzlies tonight. So Stu was able to hit 4 of 10. It came in a quick spurt. However, the other times after the 3 in a row, when he wasn't hitting, and even when the shots he did hit, driving lanes aren't open. It's going to be tough for Cade to get all the way to the rim because teams aren't going to respect him. Jaden Ivey, I feel like probably is going to get away with it a little bit more because Jaden Ivey is just that explosive that even if you have a guy underneath the rim, he'll still try to challenge him and probably try to jump over him. But Cade, I feel like Cade's going to struggle more with that throughout the season if defenses do elect to guard Isaiah Stewart like that, and I do expect that's how they're going to guard him. So for Isaiah Stewart individually as a player, I love seeing it, and I hope this is something that continues to happen throughout the season for him. When he misses shots, he continues to shoot, he continues to let it rip, and it does great things for his development moving forward, and maybe one day he gets to like a 37% three-point shooter. Who knows? Because that's the kind of progress, that's the road you have to travel down. There's going to be bumps in the road, but you have to fight through it. So I love seeing it for Stu individually and his development. As a team in the half court, this is why I said that they need a lob threat in their starting lineup because, again, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Cade to get to the rim. It's going to be tough for even Saddiq Bey, who we're going to talk about him a little bit at the end of the podcast as well. But even for Saddiq Bey or any of the other guys, it's going to be hard to get all the way to the rim when Isaiah Stewart's on the floor with you if he's spotting up because defenses just aren't going to react to him. They're not going to respect it enough. And the percentage that he's going to have to hit at for defenses to then elect to, instead of giving him open threes, then to give Cade attempts at the rim, it's going to be such a high percentage that I just don't think it's realistic at all for him to hit that. So I guess to wrap it up, just going to reinforce the point. For Stu's individual development, love it. Hope he continues to go that way. As far as the half-court offense, I'm a little bit concerned. I've been concerned all offseason about it, and I'm going to continue to be concerned unless Cade can really... The one thing that can counter that would be if you had like an elite pull-up shooter and someone who can draw gravity like that. And Cade is not that right now. Now, if Cade develops that, then they might be able to get away with that. They're going to be able to... The Cade's going to be able to live through them trying to sag off and cut off driving lanes because he's just going to kill them over and over with pull-ups. If he's able to do that, then it hides it a little bit. But I don't know if Cade's going to get there this year with elite pull-ups. So it's just something to watch for, something that I think is going to hurt the half-court offense or at least make it a little bit of a struggle as they try to get, familiar with each other. And maybe they find a way to somehow make it work still. But I think that's something that you need to watch that we've seen from preseason. I think is going to carry over to the regular season. Just monitor that, how teams decide to guard it. Just stay tuned for that. When we come back, I want to give a shout out and talk about Kevin Knox's game. Has he shown that he needs to get some minutes to start the season? And also Saddiq Bey and some of the other players. We'll hit on them a little bit too. But first, you guys got to hear from some of our lovely sponsors. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button, or you can leave a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Let's go ahead and ask the question now for you guys. This is the daily question. Actually, you know what? This question right here is too easy. What kind of question is this? This question was, which arena opened in 1988 as the home of the Detroit Pistons? This one's like, come on. That one's way too easy. I don't know why. I've been just going in order because I don't want to, what's it called? Actually, you know what? Fine. I guess this one's somewhat of an easy one. Actually, not somewhat. I think this is an easy one, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Maybe someone outside Detroit don't know the answer. What 7-time All-Star played guard for the Detroit Pistons from 1966 to 1975 and was elected mayor of Detroit in 2009? Go ahead and send in the answer for that one. I think that one's going to be relatively easy for you guys. If you don't know the answer to that one, I have to assume you do not live in Michigan. And even if you don't live in Michigan, I feel like that one should be like a I feel like that should be a pretty easy one. So go ahead and send in the answer down below or tweet at me at KukaHill, and I'll shout out a random answer or a random listener who got the question correct on the next podcast. But anyways, let's get back to talking about Kevin Knox, who actually I thought really impressed me. He hadn't played throughout preseason because he had been hurt. Tonight was his first action against the Memphis Grizzlies. I thought, honestly, him and Stu, I thought impressed me the most out of anybody tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, he shot 4 of 9 from the field, 3 of 6 from deep. He shot 2 of 2 from the free throw line. He had 13 points in just 18 minutes of action. He had a nice poster dunk, which got me out of my seat. I'm sure it got a lot of you guys out of your seat. Super dope to see. However, it wasn't just the shooting. He made some nice passes too. Like not some like high level playmaking reads kind of stuff, but kind of like how we talked about with Isaiah Livers, making the right pass on time and on point. He did that a few times. I don't think he was a wreck defensively either. So with a guy at his size, and the thing with Kevin Knox, when the Pistons signed Kevin Knox, we talked about that on the podcast. The thing with him, is he hitting outside shots or is he not? Because he's supposed to be a shooter. He's supposed to be a lights out outside shooter. If he can hit outside shots and he is a lights out shooter, he has to play. If he's not, then he's not really worth anything. So it's really simple with him. Now some of these other players in the Pistons, like, okay, well, if they can do this, maybe they can play, or if they can't do this, but they can do that. It's really simple with Knox. Either he's hitting the outside shot and he's playing, or he's not hitting the outside shot and he's not playing. And tonight, he was hitting it very confidently. He was shooting some contested ones and made a few really nice ones. Made a nice few plays, got to the rim, drew a foul, and dunked on somebody, along with making some nice reads and some quick decisions passing-wise. I really liked what I saw from Kevin Knox. I think he should get minutes on opening night. At 6'7", incredibly long wingspan, his size, the Pistons lack people at his size. And if he's able to hit outside shots, he's also extremely athletic, by the way, in transition, on cuts and stuff. He'll finish around the basket with dunks. So at his size and his athleticism, if he can provide anything defensively and not be just a traffic cone, which I didn't think he was tonight, I thought he was fine, and then be able to hit outside shots how he was, he has to play, I feel like, especially with Bagley out for however long he is. Kevin Knox has to play. I think the backup unit should look like Killian Burks or Kojo whenever Burks gets healthy, or if you want to play Hami instead of Kojo, go ahead. Killian, Hami, Livers, Kevin Knox, and Jalen Duren. That's the backup lineup that I would go with, and then start with Cade, Ivy, Bojan, Saddiq, and Stu. That's the 10-man rotation I would have. I think that's what they should do right there. I really liked what I saw from Kevin Knox. I hope he has a good year for the Pistons. I hope he hits outside shots at a consistent rate, because this guy, he was a high draft pick, and this basically, I think, is probably his last chance to hang in the league. And it just comes down to him with if you can hit outside shots, Kevin Knox, you'll stay in the league, because at your size, like I just said, you are needed on teams. And he has seasons where he is lights out from deep. He's had seasons where he's lights out from the corners. And then he's had seasons where he just can't hit nothing. So if he can get consistent and continue to play like he did tonight against the Grizzlies for the Pistons moving forward, I actually think he's a really good pickup and he needs to be playing. I don't think the Pistons have anybody else like him besides him and Isaiah Livers and maybe Saddiq Bey. But I'm more so talking about a player with incredible length at the wing position and somewhat athletic. So Saddiq Bey can hit threes, obviously. That's not, you guys know what I'm saying. Obviously not saying Saddiq can't hit threes like him. Saddiq can hit outside shots. I'm just talking about that prototype of extremely long, nice size, and athleticism to him. I feel like it's just Kevin Knox and Isaiah Livers with the ability to shoot outside too. So I liked what I saw from Kevin Knox. To wrap up the preseason, another player I want to talk about, Saddiq Bey. So I'm gonna say this about Saddiq, man. When Saddiq does anything with the ball that's not an immediate quick decision or shooting, it's a adventure, dude. It's just a straight up adventure, and I cringe 90% of the time. His shot selection is just I honestly feel like his shot selection is his biggest weakness. Not just the fact he can't get off the ground very high and he doesn't have great touch around the rim. Not that kind of stuff. I think it's the selection that he takes his shots with is it's putrid. And some nights he's able to hit bad shots. Like he's a good He's a good, bad shot maker on nights, and that's when he really blows off. That's when he really just goes crazy because he can hit bad shots on some nights. But consistently taking bad shots with his athleticism is just not the way to go, especially when you're getting to the paint and you have guys that are open and you can use your leverage for good things for the team. It doesn't have to be you scoring every time. And I feel like that's something that he struggled with for 2 years, and we've seen him struggle with it in the preseason. It feels like every time he's touched the ball, he's shooting the ball. He's doing his own thing. He's going to shoot the basketball. He's not going to pass it. Which, if you're good enough to do that, go ahead. But tonight, he shot 7 of 17. He hasn't been very efficient in the preseason either. It's just, Saddiq, I feel like, makes life harder on himself because he wants to be more than what he is, and a lot of fans want him to be more than what he is. And if he simply took better shots, then maybe he would have a chance at that. I don't know. I don't think he's going to be what a lot of you guys think he is, but he would have a better chance at hitting it if he took better shots. Like getting to the rim and barely being able to get off the ground, but still trying to force something up over 2 defenders. It's just not. It's not a good selection. It's not a good shot. If he was able to turn that instead to hitting the guy who's been open consistently when he does it in the corner on the wing, then he instantly becomes more valuable. And guess what? Now there won't be 2 people at the rim, and maybe you can get a better shot off at the rim next time you do it. Like, he has to make better decisions, or he's going to continue to be inefficient. He's going to continue to be a low 40% from the field kind of player. Like, that's something that he's struggled with for 2 years. It doesn't look like he's changed it a lot in the preseason. Now, hopefully that changes when the regular season rolls around. But yeah, through 3 games, he shot 34% from the floor, 35% from deep, which is, you can take that, I guess. But 34% from the floor, it's not good. It's not good on 11.5 shot attempts a game. And I'm telling you, a lot of it is because he's taking bad shots. He's taking bad shots. Someone has to talk with him. He has to learn. He has to develop. He can't keep taking these bad shots. It's tough. It not only is it tough on the team, it's tough on him. It makes him look worse than what he is. I think that right there, and I've told you guys this for 2 years now with Saddiq, that is his biggest development. That is his biggest weakness. I don't know if he's going to be able to develop it. But I'm telling you right now that in the half court, with the fact, what we just talked about in the last segment with Isaiah Stewart, and the off ball, how you're going to have to split things with Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, if you add on what Saddiq's trying to do with the ball in his hands and not trying to make the right play all the time, it's going to make the Pistons half-court offense one of the worst half-court offenses in the entire NBA. When you combine all those things that they're going to have to figure out, how they're going to deal with defenders not respecting Stu. Is Stu going to hit enough of the outside shots to where it will matter or won't matter? How are you going to split up Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham's on-ball, off-ball reps? How are you going to make those 2 guys work? And now you got to worry about, is Saddiq going to make the right play when we do put the ball in his hands, or is he going to continue to take back shots? Like, all those things cannot be happening for your half-court offense at the exact same time, or it's going to be a putrid offense. Now, I will say this. The one thing that he's doing, Saddiq, on his drives to the basket, he did that for the last half of the season last year, which I really gave him a lot of credit for. And I think this can be something that he brings a part of his game continually throughout his career, but he just has to do it on better decision making. Like, if he just took better shots and better decisions, it would shine out a lot more. And the fact that he's drawing free throws, like, if he was taking better shots, making better decisions with the ball, and drawing these free throws that he's drawing, we'd be talking so much differently about Saddiq, because he's averaging 6.3 free throws a game, which is a lot through the preseason. And he was averaging around north of 4.5 attempts last year over the last, 41 games of the year, which we talked about a lot. He's shooting 90% in the preseason from the free throw line. That's really good. That's really good. So there's a pathway to Saddiq being really fine, really good. But it doesn't involve him dribbling so much and taking bad shots all the time. If he just cuts that stuff out and does what he does right, or does well, I should say, and also makes the right play on passes when he gets into the paint, he instantly becomes more valuable. But through the preseason, it looks like this is something he's going to continue to struggle with, and I'm hoping that we see him get better at it throughout the regular season once it starts up. So that's all I've got for you guys today, man. Let me know what you guys thought about the 4 games in preseason. They lost every single game, and I don't think any of the games were relatively pretty either. So are you guys worried at all about the Pistons? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. Any of your thoughts, any thought that you could possibly have from the Pistons preseason, let me know. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button at the YouTube channel. We're almost to 4,000 subscribers. I believe we're 7 away. So if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. You can also leave a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. And until the next podcast, my God, my voice is cracked. Until the next podcast, I'll see you guys later. Peace out, everybody. Stay safe. Peace out, and go Pistons.